So let's get into it. Let's look at his Michael teachings first. So this right here is an overview of his main characteristics from his chart. He's a striving focus. He's a king role. The secondary traits are warrior. He's got an essence twin that's a warrior. His goal is flow. His attitude is pragmatist. His mode is power. His center is moving. His obstacle is impatience, and his body type is jovial. But I'll get into what all those mean. That's just a quick overview. So this is his more full-fledged chart. This is all his information from what I got from his chart. So what Michael Teachings is it basically shows you what your soul characteristics are, what you chose to choose, that we chose for your whole reincarnational cycle. Basically, we start incarnating on a planet and choose certain characteristics for the whole cycle. And we go through different stages of development until we stop incarnating and start moving to the higher planes of existence. So it's like a deeply spiritual system. And so I'll explain what these two things here are. We have essence on the left, which is all the characteristics that he has for every single life that he has on Earth. So all this stuff on the left is going to be the same no matter what life he's living. And on the right, this is the overleaves. These are the characteristics that are only applicable to him in this life. So they're personality characteristics that he chose to complete certain tasks and do certain things in this life. So let's go into the first thing. So his role is a king. And if you look at the different roles and the different energies you can choose from, this is the whole chart of all the characteristics that you can possibly choose. So he is king, which is on the action axis. This is very action oriented. And there's 7 roles. So there's server, which is dealing with inspiring people one-on-one. Priest, which is dealing with people's higher growth and dealing with groups. Artisan is the one-on-one expression axis role, which is very creative. And the sage is also on the expression axis, but it deals with groups, and it's more about expressing your uniqueness and communicating insight. Then there's warrior, which is a very task-oriented, doing and physical type, very action-oriented because it's on the action axis, but it's more one-to-one than the king. So the king seeks self-mastery and wants to lead groups. So, and then the last one is scholar, which is the assimilation axis, which deals with studying and learning and sharing information. So he's a king. Like I said, that's seeking self-mastery. When he's in his positive pole, that means he's seeking self-control and excellence. If he's in his negative pole, he feels entitled to have his own way and tell others what to do. So he could be expressing the negative pole in certain times and then positive in certain times. But the goal is to be on the positive pole. So the other people that are kings are Jesus Christ, Buddha, Alexander the Great, Donald Trump, Steve Jobs, Arnold Schwarzenegger, John F. Kennedy, Ian Curtis, which is the singer of Joy Division, the post-punk band. And I put Joe Duplantier on here also. He's the guitarist and vocalist of Gojira metal. It's like a progressive death metal band. So kings want to rule, essentially. They don't always have the opportunity to do that, but when they can, they do. So, going into a leadership position of some kind is really important for the kings and guiding others. So his essence twin is a warrior. And warriors, like I was saying, is like the ordinal version of the king. It's the one-on-one version, but it seeks challenge and wants to achieve a lot. Very action oriented. So his warrior essence twin is discarnate. And just so you guys know what an essence twin is, it's essentially a soul that you chose to uh, grow with and bond with. And the relationship is for your spiritual growth throughout all your incarnations. So 30% of the time, you'll actually know who your essence twin is because they'll be in your life somehow. They'll be like a friend, or they could be your partner. But because it's an essence twin, it doesn't mean necessarily that it's like a soulmate in the sense that it's going to be fine and dandy and you're just perfect match for each other. But you do know each other really well because you're actually sharing each other's energy all the time. And so because his is discarnate, which means it's not incarnated right now, he's basically getting a boost of war energy. So what happens is the essence twin is kind of riding your shoulders energetically. And so you get a boost of that kind of quality. So he has some secondary influence of warrior. So he's got king and warrior going on, which are both action-oriented axis stuff. So it makes sense why he's so productive and does so much stuff, and he's just immersed in the world of doing. And so we'll get more into that too, because his other secondary characteristics from his casting, which deals, the casting is basically where you're positioned in your entity, and an entity is like a group of 1,000 souls that you decided to incarnate with. So depending on where he's placed in his entity, he's going to take on certain characteristics. So he's got warrior and king as further secondaries. So basically, he's just like full on king warrior in like every aspect. So this just, it reinforces his role and his essence twins energies because it's the same. So he just has more of that. The server one is not going to be very strong because it's greater cadence. It's the least apparent and the least active of the energies. So he won't have a lot of server energy. If this was also warrior or king, then it'd be an extra boost. But this isn't like very doesn't apply to him as much as the others. So yeah, if you look at that, that means that he has all these red rectangles. I mean, all these are action oriented. So it's a lot. It's a lot of action oriented stuff. So let's just talk about his cadre and entity a little bit. His cadre and entity. So what a cadre is it's a group of 7 entities, and an entity is a group of 1,000 souls. So basically, we're part of this greater, like larger organism of different souls that are associated with each other. And you'll be like really close to the people that are in your cadre. Like in my case, like my family is all in the same cadre as me. I'm actually in the same cadre and entity as Kanye West. This is 4-7, cadre 4, entity 7. So the makers of the Michael Teachings just assign numbers to the different cadres and have some descriptions of what the cadres are. So cadre 4, what they're focused on is exacting specific high standards that brings things into clear focus and helps manifest their full potential. So high standards and bring things into clear focus. So that would be like for 7 to 10,000 souls, something like that. These are all using these characteristics of the cadre. So the entity is more specific. It's a subgroup of the cadre. It's 1/7 of the cadres of the of all the souls that are in the cadre, because each entity is 1,000 souls, and there's 7 of those. So his entity is number 7, and the numbers for the entity relate to the different roles. So if you could see that this is red, that means that it's aligned with the king. So it's more king-oriented energy. So like it says here, it's entity 7 of cadre 4 cleans up messes that other people make. It's like king casting. And there's many excellent teachers of various kinds. So this entity has 1,468 members, which is a little bit more than the other ones, I think. About 85 of them are cycled off, no longer incarnating, and 541 are seventh young or younger, which is the striving focus, is the young soul age, is what that's referring to. And I'll explain what that means too. So a lot of them are further along. Most of them are past the midpoint of our reincarnational cycle on the planet. So I'll explain that more later. The people that are also in this entity are Antonio Banderas, Thomas Jefferson, Alan Moore, which is the writer of Watchmen and V for Vendetta, Viggo Mortensen, the guy from Lord of the Rings, Haley Joel Osment, the one from Sixth Sense, Christina Ricci, Henry David Thoreau, and XXX Tentacion, the rapper. So that's his entity. All the people in his entity are going to have some of these similar characteristics. They're going to have this overall arching goal. So once all the souls from this entity are done incarnating, they start merging their energies together. They'll be on the astral plane and waiting for each other to finish up, and then they'll start moving into the higher planes, the causal, and then they'll start merging together. So it's pretty crazy how that works, but that's how our souls are configured, actually. So that's his entity. He also has a task companion. Everybody has a task companion. Usually it's discarnate. I don't know. I haven't seen it like incarnate yet in anybody's charts. But basically they just help with like life tasks and stuff. The artisan is the creative type. The positive pole, it's creation, genuine and effective invention. And the negative pole, you're just copying things or making, not really like inventing new things. So the artisans, just so you know, like understand what kind of people they are. It's like David Bowie, Eric Clapton, Kurt Cobain, Leonardo DiCaprio, Walt Disney, Michael Jackson, Daniel Day-Lewis, Alanis Morissette, Jim Morrison, Brad Pitt, Van Gogh, George Lucas. I think I said that already. So yeah, those are all the like very sensitive types. But this really helps Kanye focus on bringing some creativity into his work, essentially. So this is a very common choice to have an artisan as a task companion, because it really helps with your creative work. So there's something called orientation, which is there's 3 different types. There's truth, love, and energy. So truth is focused on the intellect and the highest expression of the intellect. And love is more about the emotions, and energy is more of the physicality and the vitality of experience. So his is focused on truth. People with the truth orientation are more likely to be blunt about the truths they perceive. So they'll want to just make sure the truth is always being said. So that's his orientation. Now, this is crazy. This is really crazy. So there's a balance between male and female energy that we choose in our for our cycle, and his is fully on the male side, which is super rare. Like that's crazy amount. Usually people are in the middle, like 50-50 almost, leaning one side or the other a little bit. But his is full on male energy, 100%. So what that means is his energy it's focused energy on doing. It moves into the outer world in a linear way towards goals. the positive pole of it is called penetration, and the negative pole is intrusion. So he's just focused on doing all the time and moving towards goals and getting things done. Completely externally oriented and focused on action. So that just fits with everything else so far, which is, he's got king and warrior role energies going on, matched with 100% male energy. So this guy is like super active and achievement oriented. So if he had any female energy, it would be more emphasized on being. It's more focused on the inner world and generating an atmosphere. So it's a little bit different. He would be more internally focused and focused on being and building up energy that way. But he's all action. So that's the situation. His frequency is 88 out of 100, which is pretty high. Higher frequency souls vibrate with greater speed and intensity and just get things, or they have a more intense life. They go through things faster. They have more activity. If you're lower, you're more like solid and grounded, or you can be more fluid. And your energy will feel different. So people who are around him will feel him to be like more airy. So that's kind of his energy there. He's got 10 previous cycles. So what that means is he was actually living on 10 different planets before he decided to start incarnating on Earth. So that's a good amount. I mean, most of the people that I've had charts channeled are at 10. The average on the planet is 4. So he's further along from that. So it's pretty high, but it's not like extremely high. Jesus had 19 previous cycles when he incarnated as Jesus. So yeah, he had 19, which is a lot. That's the most that we know of anybody. So, he's got like half as many as Jesus has. But like my previous cycles are 10 also, and like all my family is 10. So it could be because just the people I'm interested in studying are in the same level of experience, I guess. But yeah, like, so the other person I know that's lower that I've channeled than 10 is Hitler. He's got 7. So it's interesting to see what that means, because he ended up, causing some serious issues. And he had 7 previous cycles. So it's interesting. But yeah, so he's got 10. There's something called a global job and a community responsibility that each soul has for each of their lives. It's the same for each of the lives. And so his global job is called transition or transformation. And it aligns with the artisan energy and the priest energy. So the reason why it's artisan and priest is because the artisan is about invention and the priest is about salvation or higher growth at the higher things, spiritual stuff. So basically what's going on is transition means, it's like bringing in new inventions or ideas that require a transition to a new way of doing or looking at things. So it's like a new perspective, it's a new thing. So like when cars were created, that was like a new paradigm of invention. It's like it took a while to catch on, but once it did, it was a completely new adaptation that we started using in society. So what happens is from the transition, it's like you're transitioning people into new ideas or inventions, and the transformation is making it so people can actually participate in that new paradigm, whatever the new invention is. So this is cool because it does really apply to the things that he creates, which is his music for one, which he had his own style of the way he made music. He's a very unique producer, and his music had a certain it was completely new, and the way that he approached his music and his image was different than what was popular in rap or hip hop at the time. So that's one thing, but he also has his like clothing line stuff, like his shoes and all his fashion stuff, which kind of fits into this too. I mean, he has also his like STEM player, all these different inventions and stuff that he has. So he's really focused on invention and transforming the way people like focus on things and wants people to move into new paradigms of new inventions, essentially. So that's pretty cool. So then his community responsibility is called or faith, and this is like a double priest quality. Priest is like aligned with salvation. So trust means it teaches people to have trust in something greater, higher above your current life challenges. To trust that higher self and your higher self are teaching them something that's good for them in the long run. And faith is teaching faith in higher universal consciousness as a guide to lead others towards a goal, towards enlightenment, or towards one's own spiritual evolution. It's actually the hardest community responsibility to have because you have to convince people to trust and have faith beyond their current life circumstances. So, this is basically just what trust and faith means. It's like faith in a higher power. And, he does talk about having faith in God and having God lead you and stuff, and that really does align with what's going on here. So this is actually something that he's teaching. So you can hear him talk about that sometimes. So that's all his characteristics of his essence. I just covered all this stuff here. So all those things that I just said were characteristics that he has for each of his lives. It's the same. That it doesn't change at all. So he remains this configuration. He's always a king. He always has some warrior secondary, and he's always in cadre 457. He has the same global job and the same male energy and frequency and all that. So now we'll move into his overleaves, which are the characteristics that he chose for this life. So the first one on here is the soul age or focus. And he's in striving, which is another, you could say it lines with the action axis because see it's red or it's like pink. The red or pink is the same. It's action-oriented axis. So it's emphasizing lessons about worldly success. Positive pole is accomplishment, asserting one's individuality in a way that helps the world. And the negative pole is self-centeredness, which is individuality defined in terms of apparent short-term advantage to self. So basically during this time, it's about external achievement. Trying to be as successful in the world as you can, make as big of a mark on the planet as you can. And so if you look down here, these are the actual soul ages or different focuses you can have. And this is a linear timeline. So essentially when you start incarnating on a planet, you're in the surviving focus. So you're just getting used to the body, how it functions, how you work on the planet, and learning the bare essentials of everything. And then after that, you go into the structuring focus. These are also these are also known as infant, baby, young, mature, and old. I use different names of them because it's a little bit more descriptive. So the infant is surviving. Baby is structuring, which deals with becoming part of society, understanding rules, and working along with others, integrating in society, stuff like that. So he's already done with that, and now he's in striving. He's at level 2 of 7 of striving, which means that he's starting to get comfortable with the striving focus. He's done with structuring, but now he's really moving into the striving. He's not fully established in it yet, so he could be going back into the structuring a little bit sometimes with that perspective. The structuring focus is not always fundamentalist, but it can be fundamentalist in its viewpoints and stuff, because it's about like they're learning how to be aligned to society and follow rules and stuff. So a fundamentalist view is more focused on following rules than otherwise. So, not saying he's necessarily fundamentalist, but that could be an influence based on where he's at. But it doesn't always apply like that. So after striving, the young soul age, he would move into relating, or the mature soul age, which deals with the inner world and emotions and relationships and connecting with others. But it's very deep and very spiritual. It's very inner focused. And then after that, you start going more into the intellect and getting an overview, understanding of all experience of the earlier soul ages, and start contextualizing and philosophizing about how everything works, what you've learned, and then you start like teaching other people what you've learned. So that's the old soul age. So if you can see right here, I have the arrow there at level 2. He's right in the middle of this, almost right in the middle of the soul ages and the reincarnational cycle. So he's got some more to go before he stops incarnating. But right now, this really fits for him that he's striving, because you can see how focused on success he is. And he's doing pretty well at it in terms of how successful he is, obviously. So that's pretty cool. His goal is interesting. His goal is actually flow, which means that this is a lifetime of rest, and he's got to learn how to let go and flow with things. Let things come to him and let things happen. Not be so controlled. So you're trusting life a little bit more. So the positive pole is suspension, which means you're carried along by the currents of life. And the negative pole is inertia, or feeling stuck. So this means essentially that he's had lives beforehand, before this life, where he had a lot of activity and had hard lives, essentially. And now he's getting kind of a boost and of support that's kind of leading him forward. So when you have a goal of flow, you get supported in terms of like financial things, getting a roof over your head, getting food, getting clothing, whatever you need to survive it comes to you a lot easier than people who don't have this goal. So it's interesting. It's interesting to see that his past lives, he was very active and had harder lives. And this is kind of a vacation life in a sense. So that's interesting. His attitude is pragmatist, which means you see the world in terms of what works best and most efficiently. Pragmatic means practical, so positive pole is practicality. You find the most workable approach for a particular situation. And when it's in the negative pole, is called dogma, and that means that what was once seemed as most practical is made into a rigid practice that is applied even when it is not appropriate for the best solution. So you could be rigid in his way of thinking in terms of what he thinks is practical, but otherwise he's actually finding the most workable approach. So that's his attitude. His mode is power. So this means that the modes are how you release your energy. And power mode, you release it strongly. The positive pole of that is authority, where you amplify your expression and it makes you appear knowledgeable and confident. So you can really see that with him, the way he communicates himself. But the negative pole is oppression. So that's throwing one's weight around, which bears down uncomfortably on others. So he's either oppressing or he's being, an authority of some kind. And you can see the oppression sometimes in the way that he communicates himself. It is a powerful expression that he has, but he's gotten into trouble the way that he expresses himself sometimes. So that's his mode. The centers, there's actually 4 centers that you can choose from. You have a primary center and a secondary. His primary one is moving, and so there's the 4 centers that you can have are emotional, which is on the inspiration axis, intellectual, which is expression, and physical on the action axis, and moving. So emotional deals with the emotions, obviously. Intellectual is with the intellect. Physical deals with physical sensations that you feel in the body, like gut feelings and different signals that your body gives. You're really sensitive to that. And then moving is dealing with action. So the actual moving of energy. So what that actually says for that is moving is an inner pathway to universal energy used for movement. When in the positive pole, it's enduring, which means experiencing being in the zone. The negative pole is energetic, where you just temporarily move to act, perhaps leading to burnout due to poor energy management. So this is crazy because I don't really see a lot of people who are moving centered first. The most common one is intellectual that I've seen. I think the Western world is really focused on the intellectual center the most. So that makes sense. But again, this is fitting with his action-oriented axis stuff. So like, if you look here, and I'll explain this at the end too, like he's got a lot of red. In his role as essence, he's got all these action-oriented characteristics, king and warrior. And now he's moving too. So more action-oriented stuff. It's just, he's like all action. It's like what this means, you know? So that's his first center, and his second center is emotional. Positive pole of that is sensibility, means your ability to feel is fully developed, and the negative pole is sentimentality, which is feeling is cloying and open to manipulation. So don't know where he is in terms of the positive poles for this, but emotional is a secondary thing for him, and it does seem like he gets emotional a lot, and I'll explain how this applies in his astrology coming up soon too. So there's also something called the obstacle. So the obstacle, also known as the chief obstacle or chief feature, it's a characteristic that you choose to deal with in a life, which makes things a little bit harder. They're usually like negative characteristics in a sense, like so they're hard to deal with, and you have to learn to work on it and get better at it. But if we didn't have obstacles, life would be a little bit too easy. So we choose these things to learn how to deal with energy and grow from it and break out of the negative aspects of it. So his main one is impatience. Again, that's his action-oriented one. Look, it's red. It aligns with the king. And it's a fear of missing out. So you just want to do a lot of stuff and be very active and be participating in stuff, and you feel like if you miss out, it's stressful. So if you look at the positive pole and negative pole, they're kind of both negative. So the audacity of the positive pole means being disrespectful while pushing oneself ahead of others. So trying to get to some other place and not being patient about it, being impatient. Negative pole is intolerance. It just means being testy or rude when feeling delayed or inconvenienced. So that's his first obstacle. His second one is greed, which is basically a fear of lack or want, which is usually fixated on something such as money, food, sex, or attention. But you kind of have it feels like you have a hole inside yourself you're trying to fill, and nothing that you experience is really filling it. But you just keep on wanting more and more attention, food, sex, whatever experience it is that you really want. You just want more and more of it. So the positive pole of that is egotism. It's still kind of negative. Puts one's appetite above the needs of others. And then the negative pole is veracity. It's having unbridled appetites. So it's just having a lot of appetite. This is another way of saying it. So those are his two obstacles he's dealing with. You also have a body type. It's actually a combination of body types. So he's got two. His main one is jovial. Okay, so jovial is all these body types are more of like an energy. They do have some physical characteristics that are associated with it, but what I've noticed for it is more the energy that you embody. So when you're around this person, the energy that you feel from them is the body type. So our bodies are interacting with each other in terms of what kind of energies they're outputting, and certain body types are attracted to each other. So for him, this is jovial, and that means the characteristics, the physical characteristics, is like full-bodied, but the energy is like extroverted. It's the most developed body type. The archetype for it is the emperor. On the positive pole, what that signifies is associated with being grand, generous, compassionate, kind, loyal, caring, affectionate, maternal, lucky, philosophical, associated with the arts and languages. It's well-directed mental powers, highly evolved appreciation for life, and powerful presence. In the negative pole, it's subject to periodicity, self-indulgence, extravagance, conceitedness, wastefulness, craving attention, or being overwhelmed. So this one is, yeah, it's basically a grand energy. Jovial aligns with the planet Jupiter. So yeah, like the Jupiter is like a teacher and very philosophical. So that's why these characteristics match. You know, these are the same characteristics. That's how you describe Jupiter. So the secondary one is martial. So that's like Mars, and it's aligned with action-oriented axis again. This is like the king. So again, he's got more king stuff. You know, king axis stuff, action-oriented. So it's feisty and active. This is associated with like a muscular body. The archetype is the athlete. Positive pole is vigorous, energetic, passionate, highly sexed, decisive, freedom-loving, brutally honest, forthright, feisty, live with a flair, and a defender of the weak and downtrodden. The negative is being impulsive, easy to anger, pugnacious, overreacting, defensive, quarrelsome, brutal, rude, overhasty, boisterous, and lacking forethought. So it's a very physical doing type. You know, like these people want to be more physically active than the other types. So he's got a mix of jovial and martial for his body types. There's something called quadrant, which deals with what role you take in a group setting. So there's love, support, power, and knowledge. So the support one is the one that comes and helps other people with things. So they'll be on the side helping other people with whatever they're doing. So he's not the power position, which is the one that's leading in a group setting necessarily. He's the one that helps other people, which is interesting. Taking the support position. So his needs are adventure, security, and exchange. These are the three main needs. There's like 9 of them, but these are the 3 that are the most strong with him. So adventure is, you know, going on adventures of some kinds. Whatever you consider to be an adventure, you're always seeking towards those kinds of things. Security deals with, like, you know, having enough money, having resources that you need. And exchange is how you exchange with others. It could be sharing information, knowledge, spending quality time with other people, even physical touch is considered exchange. So it's really connecting with other people and sharing, and it's really balanced. So it's like not one person's more superior in the exchange than the other person. It's a joint shared thing. So those are his needs. And so that's everything on his Michael chart. So if we were going to summarize it, what I can say is he's got a lot of action-oriented axis stuff. Like there's a lot of red. You know, king, warrior, warrior, king, cadre entity 4-7, which is the king-oriented one. Striving focus is action-oriented. You know, he's got high male energy, which really focuses on doing. Moving, which is also focused on doing action. And patience, same thing. Martial body, very active. So it makes sense because he does a lot of stuff and is always focused on doing. So he's achieved a lot by doing so. He also has, you know, a couple of green things for his goal and attitude. So these ones are the assimilation axis, which align with the scholar. So it's more neutral. And then power, which is the way he expresses himself, is pretty strong, you know. So it's interesting looking at all that. He's action oriented, and according to his global job, he wants to create things that change the way people, you know, creating new inventions of some kind or providing new services that's changing the way people approach things. And he's focused on the higher stuff too, because he's got the trust and faith and community responsibility. So that's it. I mean, he's one of the most action-oriented souls that I've come across. So it's pretty cool to see all that. Like, you don't see king, warrior, warrior, king, all that too often. So it explains why he's so intense, you know. So that's it for his Michael teachings.